I'm so sorry I couldn't
No,
find the
don't be
link.
sorry. All good. We are live, just so you know.
Surprise.
Surprise.
Hello, world.
We were really anxious that our stuff wasn't going to work, and we could only test it by actually going live.
Hey,
Yeah,
that's cool. I'm comfortable just going live. That's fine. That's what we do in content creation world, isn't it?
that is true. And by the way, Heather, this is Nick, my business
Hey,
partner,
Nick.
co-host,
It's
etc.
me.
Cool. Nice to meet you.
You guys
And
did an
Nick's
awesome podcast for that on Power Podcasting. That's some good stuff.
we
Yay.
we had a good time. We had a good time with that interview. Yeah, and we'll have to link to that for our Minvo audience. But yeah, so this is a whole different audience, Heather, than the podcasting morning chat.
Okay.
This is with Minvo. They are a short form editing service. It has AI built into it as well, but it's also cool because it has a lot of manual functionality too. So you can allow the AI to get you started, and then you can dive in and do all the editing things that you
Awesome.
probably are used to. And so I think what we want to do today is really dig into more of the technical side. I think you and I spoke in our last interview more of the mental game of content creation. Today, I want to dig into really the ins and outs, those technical things like hooks and transitions, and
Sure.
even understanding the way to tell a story using short form content. So we will kick it off with really, like I said, about the hooks, because that's just one that I think so many people hear about early on when they're getting into content creation, and it becomes kind of ingrained in our
Hmm.
brains as to how important these hooks are. So, can you maybe lead us off here with why you think hooks are so crucial for short form videos specifically?
People will not watch your short form video unless you have a good hook.
Yeah. And so how do you then know, like, and what do you think is a good hook then? And how do you know that you've got a good hook?
This is what no one talks about that I have painfully discovered through a lot of mistakes, and I still catch myself not taking my own advice, and I always have to return to this concept. If I were to write down my hook on a piece of paper, the concept might be good and hooky. It might be interesting. It might be a great hook. But for me to really elevate it to the next level, I need to move the words around. I need to move the most important words at the very beginning and not at the end. So even if this sentence is hooky, it's interesting. If the words that are interesting are at the end of the sentence and not at the very beginning, then it's not a good hook. So here's an example. Let's say I were to say, this is how this is how I'm going to this is how you create binge worthy content. Okay, that's a good hook. I would watch that. I'd want to learn about that. But let's say that my hook I said, today I'm going to give you an amazing formula that will make your content binge worthy. That's a pretty interesting hook. But
Yeah.
today I'm going to share with you a formula that's going to make your content binge worthy. It takes me that, and it's not sound like, oh my God, this is so in the weeds or whatever, but creators who are like for real serious, they pay attention to this. How do I put binge worthy at the very beginning? Saying, and I'm just pulling this out of my butt here, but bin do this for binge worthy content.
Mm.
I still reduce a few words there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm asking myself in a hook. I'm writing down my hook and then I'm seeing what words can I eliminate, and then how can I bring the searchable terms, the things that people are interested in at the very, very beginning, because it's almost like SEO. When y'all are trying to rank blog posts and
Yeah.
YouTube and all that, that real estate at the top, it's the same thing with short form content.
Okay. So when we are creating that hook, one thing to think about then is really trying to get as much as you can out in as few words as possible. Is that fair?
And put the most important words as close to the beginning as possible, because it's literally when they say 3 seconds, they're not playing. And so, are you saying that word, that term that people are looking for in the first 3 seconds, not in 5 seconds?
Okay. So, what are your thoughts then? One strategy I've just been playing around with, and I haven't come to any conclusion yet, but we see a lot of videos now start off with a hook and there's a title going across the screen. I don't, right? So, and that title, I'm using that to help emphasize the hook in case maybe I am a little too wordy, but maybe they've got a brief idea of it going across the screen. Have you tested that? And if so, does that seem to work?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I don't just style wise, I don't do it, but I've seen folks do that really, really well. I think it's a good alternative to what I'm saying, but I think you can maximize your impact by doing both. I had a friend the other day who was sharing an experience. He and his wife were sitting on the couch and they were both scrolling, and he's a content creator, and he was kind of watching and paying attention to what she stopped on. And he told me without a doubt she always stopped on the thing that had a title at the top, like it captured her attention, which I thought was really, really interesting. So it's a visual hook, essentially. And there's different ways you can do that. I do it with imagery. So usually I lead with Justin Bieber says or whatever. So I want to show Justin
Right.
Bieber in the first few seconds. So visually typed out, yeah, what you're saying, but you'll definitely double your impact if you can do both.
Got it. Okay. I want to deviate for a second because I want to talk about some of those videos of yours that first went viral. And remind me the name of the series again, because we
I call it
talked
the
about
chair series.
the chair series. Okay,
Get
so
creative.
so tell us a little bit about that and what you think made that go viral for you.
The most important thing I've pulled from that series is creative restriction. I would not be asking myself these questions about writing and hooks and transition. The very micro details that I've gotten into over the past few months would have never happened without putting an intentional container around what I was trying to share. Now, I'm not saying that creative people don't like hearing like, I don't want to be limited, I have all these ideas, but I think it's really important when we're learning a new skill set that we narrow in the container in which we're learning it so we can get really micro with understanding how to formulate story. So, for those who don't know, what I did is I've put out hundreds of videos, maybe closer to 1,000. I don't know. I have done it. I've put in a lot of reps over the past few years trying to figure out how to make content pop. But what I've been doing is I got an idea and I just executed on it, which is great because it got me comfortable on camera and using my voice. And there was a season of that. But when I kind of got past the fear of getting on, I had to think more strategically. And I decided to put a creative restriction on myself and say, okay, I'm only going to sit here in this chair and figure out what I'm trying to say and figure out storytelling. Now, why did certain things, quote, go viral? I don't think that that's important at all. I think virality matters so little and we're obsessed with it. And I've gone viral multiple times and not seen fruit. I told you before, I had a 10 million view on one video, and the only thing that I can do with that is sit here and tell you about it. I have smaller videos now with my chair series, but I have leads coming into my business. I've had, 4 speaking opportunities, one out of the States just the past 6 months. Like things have actually been happening because I'm creating a body of work that is related and quote binge worthy. And I think that's way more important for creators to focus on other than going viral. Yes, I can tell you some things that went well in the Connor Price video or the Louis whatever video. I can have some guesses there, but you know as well as I do that you can plan and plan and plan and plan, but unless you are putting your entire life and have a production team and strategy calls and take it to the level that Mr. Beast did when he and his friends would agonize for hours over a script, you can't really reverse engineer virality until you get to that point. Most of us don't have that luxury, so build a body of work instead.
Yeah, I love that. And okay, so if we're gonna build this, we've started with a hook, and we're not caring about virality, right? Then let's focus on creating a piece of content that is effective and is
Yes.
getting the message across to our target audience. So we know the
Yes.
hooks is important.
Yes.
What would you say is another area of the technical side of creating a short? And think about this too, because you're a podcaster as well. So think about this too from a podcaster's perspective and all that content that they already have. What should they be thinking about when they're creating a short from that content?
They need to think about, does this stand alone and add value and is bomb without having to listen to the podcast? Right now, folks think about it, and I'm a podcast host. Like, I want to do that with my life. I am very serious about my show. So I'm saying this with through the lens of someone who is doing this too. When I stopped going from I'm trying to promote my podcast to I'm trying to make great short form content that weaves in my show as a pillar, then I started noticing, folks finding my podcast through my content because I wasn't just clipping stuff out and putting it over here to try to get people to come here. Started thinking about, if they never come here, did they get value from this short? And the way you do that is making sure that it's framed in a way that there's a beginning, middle, and end, just like a story, that I understand the context. 'Cause sometimes, you'll get those clips mid podcast and they're like, then my mom said blah blah blah, and there's like a cool quote in it or whatever,
Yeah.
but there's no real conclusion, there's no valuable takeaway. And so short form, you're thinking about shareability, you're thinking about, would somebody share this with their friend because it's either entertaining or they learn something. There's a mini podcast in that one clip. It's a beginning, middle, and end. It's final. And I know it sounds backwards, but I think that's the best way to promote your show, because people are tired of getting sold to. Marketing in that way doesn't work. I don't believe in repurposing anymore. I used to be a huge friend. I used to repurpose the hell out of everything. Everything. There was a point I did it for about 6 months, maybe even more, where I was creating like 15 pieces of content for each podcast episode, and I shared
Wow.
it everywhere. And do you know the results that I got from that? Like I'm consistent. I did this stuff. Maybe it worked 5 years ago. I think there's another level that content creators have to commit to, which is narrative and really understanding the story and being okay with creating content for that platform, and not trying to pull people off of it. If you're good, people are going to seek you out and figure out what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. So now I'm hearing podcasters like, well, wait a minute. I thought I could just use all of my podcast and I could create a bunch of content just straight from it, and it could sound frustrating. So you mentioned getting more used to the idea of narrative. What's a good way for somebody to take the content that they have? Because I see you doing this, and in my opinion, really well. Taking that content that they have and repurposing it into more of a narrative.
Yeah.
How do they do that?
So we need to think about what people already care about and piggybacking off that and then embedding our content within it. So if you think about because people, and you think about your own behavior, I'm this way, you're this way, we're selfish. We're driven by our own interests and desires. Like, if I see something about Christmas, I love Coldplay. If I see something about Coldplay, I'm gonna stop and watch it. If I see something about how to get in shape when you're getting close to 40, which is all in my feed right now because I'm almost 40, like, this stuff selfishly captures my attention. So if we think about intentionally using what people are already looking for and interested in as a vehicle for our message, and how can we wrap it in that vehicle and then embed our message in it. Normally we lead with our message, right? Like, oh, my podcast, I interviewed Mark. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody gives a rat's ass. They
Right.
don't
Or I'm
care.
so excited. I just interviewed Heather Parody. It's like, okay, great. Why do I care
They don't
about
know who
that?
I
Right.
am. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Right.
But when you can identify the vehicle of what your target audience is already and saturated and freaked out about, and how can I lock my message, how can I lock my arms with that? So it doesn't have to be a celebrity or pop culture or anything like that, but it needs to have a frame that's interesting. So if I have a podcast episode where someone talked to me about, give me something, Mark, just give me something.
Talk to you about your new kitten that you just got.
Yeah, so if I think about, okay, a new kitten that I just got, that's the topic, is cats. If I think about, okay, what is popping right now? What's trending right now about cats? What is a reference about cats that most people understand? What is the biggest problem people have with their cats? What are they searching? I'm thinking like broad here. How can I bring that into my narrative and lead with that, and then wrap my podcast episode, just a little bit of a piece into it from there? It needs a vehicle.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. And if somebody wants to
Where'd
learn
the other
about
guy go?
Nick had to jet for he think he's going to be back, but
He's like,
yeah,
I went to
he
go get some lunch. This girl's boring.
I should have warned you about that. No,
No, it's
actually, he
fine.
thinks quite the opposite of you, of that about you. He thinks you're fascinating, and yeah, he told me he had to leave early. So,
That's
um,
hilarious.
yes, yes. But all right. So, what did people do to actually learn more about the art of storytelling? Like, how did you get into that? What was it, a book? And if so, what book? Like, what got you into storytelling?
There's I don't know if this book got me into it, but it was towards the beginning. It was a book called Storyworthy, and I talk about it all the time. Matthew Dix, thank you for writing that book. I told somebody about on the airplane the other day. Like, I'm literally sitting next to this dude, and I'm like, Storyworthy is a great book. I just love this book so much. But it was one of the most tactical storytelling books that I've read. I started doing The Moth. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's
Yeah.
a national storytelling competition thing. I did it last night. You get up in front of a few hundred people and you tell a true story in 5 minutes. They judge you. It's terrifying. But I did a few nights of that, and I was like, I really like this. And it was kind of this weird punk rock marketing thing because, in our entrepreneurial space, we're always using words to get people to do something. And it was interesting coming at it from an angle that I'm not trying to get you to do something. I'm trying to creatively connect with you through words, that my experience is something that you can maybe relate to. And it was just this really cool way to approach storytelling that didn't feel copy, like it was markety or, it's a landing page. So I started studying people who do performance storytelling, start taking acting classes, comedy classes, improv classes, understanding that form of communication. And I don't think in the entrepreneurial space we give enough cred to people who've been doing this in the entertainment space for a long time, figuring out narrative. I get a lot out of marketing courses, but I think if we can start going to acting classes and script writing classes and hanging out with those people, man, it would just like enrich our content so much.
I took that advice so literally when you shared that on the first interview I did with you, that I have signed up for improv classes. I'm taking them later this summer, but that's all because of you.
Yeah,
I had
that
been
makes me
thinking
so
about it,
happy.
and I remember how insistent you were that that could be even more valuable than marketing techniques. And so I'm all
10
in. I'm
times.
gonna do it.
Think about this. Last night, I'm saying because I have a photo here of it. Last night, I'm standing here and there's 250 people in this auditorium and they're all drinking wine. They don't know me from anything. They're from completely different industries. And I'm like, man, if I can share this story of what happened to me when I was 20 with them and enroll them into this, that is such for me a trickier challenge, you know, than some of the, I don't mean to disregard marketing, it's huge, but we're talking to our people in the same way, and it's so robotic and it's so transactional. I'm just bored of it. Like, I'm so bored of this stuff we talk about in the entrepreneurial space. And I feel like there's such a more enriched, interesting way to approach marketing stuff than what we've been doing.
Yeah. Yeah. A more human approach, I think, is what's needed right now, right?
Amen to
And
that.
and by the way, how did you do in your competition?
I did really good. I think I got a 9, an 8.8, and I think my low score was 8.5. So I think I came
Okay.
in like third place.
Okay.
Not bad.
That's not
I've
bad at
never
all.
won one. I've never won one, but I'm going to, and
I
I
was going to
can't
say
wait.
yet. Yet you
I,
haven't won one. Yeah.
I will. I just got a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn. A lot to
Well,
learn.
then, to that point about a lot to learn, what do you notice is a big mistake that people make when they attempt to story tell with their content?
Agenda. I have an agenda with you that I'm trying to pull one over on you and get you to do something for me. Now, there's a room for the jab, right? Or the right hook. That's what it is. There's room for the right hook that needs to happen sometimes. But like I believe this, and I've seen it because I've gotten the emails. I don't know what you do, but I want to work with you.
I
You know what I
love those.
mean?
That's the best kind of email.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's because we're approaching things from an expanse, and then here's me getting woo and weird, but test it. See how it happens. But focused on our energy and focused on showing up full hearted, open hands, where I don't need anything from you. You know what I mean? I'm
Hmm.
here to share and love you and give you examples and serve the hell out of you. And that's what my content is about. Is this expansive, energetic, lit up space. I think folks' funnels would fill up faster. Like people would seek you out when you come from that. Not saying there doesn't need to be a hard call to action. It just feels like everything in our space is a call to action. Here's the 3 steps. Step number 3, click the link in bio. Come on, man. You know what I'm saying? Like people aren't going to
Hmm.
trust you. They're annoyed with that. Like what if I didn't have anything I needed from you?
Yeah. What? Yeah. And you know what's funny? I was just talking, like, almost word for word, just earlier this week about that whole thing about those tired hooks, the 3 things that you could, and people are still doing it. And
Yeah,
I've got to think at this point most of the viewers know what you're doing when they see that, and
totally.
they're just swiping by,
And
right?
they won't watch you again.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah,
what I'm
right.
saying?
Yeah,
Right.
because then they have this expectation that you just want to sell something to them, that you've got your agenda, to your point,
Right.
and they're
Right.
not interested in that. Yeah.
Right.
It's all
That's it.
about I know a lot of people find this as a big buzzword, but authenticity is real. It's a thing, and people can read it, right? If you're not being authentic, most people can pick up on that pretty quickly.
I did a reel on this the other day. I'm fascinated with this gal, Miss Excel, and they asked her about how she made her. Now this girl is talking about freaking spreadsheets, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But she has a million followers, a million people following her, and she said that her like number one focus is her state and
Mm.
making sure that energetically she comes to the camera lit up. And I know this just sounds like the worst because people are terrified to get on their phone. And that's why I'm saying it's good to put in the reps and just put crap out there like Gary Vee talks about. But then when you start transitioning out of that and you're really ready to craft content, right? Your energy state is so important because that's what connects people to you. That's why I want to work with Mark over anybody else because there's something about him that I vibe with. It's wooey and it's weird, but I was just on a call right before this one, this whole like, what's the formula? And I'm like, yeah, there's a formula, but if you don't have heart, spirit, soul lit up, that formula is not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's genuinely, I'm not trying to blow smoke, and that's genuinely why I believe your content does do well, and why I gravitate personally to it, is because I see that. I see that. I can tell you have fun with your content. And I'm sure it gives you headaches too. But I see that you have fun with it. You mean what you're saying. It comes through. And
Good.
I believe really that's that secret ingredient so many people are looking for is, inject your passion into what you're doing and it's going to
Yeah.
shine through. But people are so scared to share that side of them because they
Hmm.
think they know what their audience wants, but really all they want is you.
We're trying to control people's perception, and it's impossible. Thank you for saying that. That's the feedback I've gotten a lot, but also know there are people who absolutely hate me and they're like, you are so annoying. I even made a whole page on my website. It's called Untestimonials. You can go find it. And I've posted people's comments. And instead of being like, they're a hater, I'm actually like, they're right. They're 100% right. Like, I move a lot in my videos. I
Yeah.
mispronounce words. I have kind of an annoying, like hyper weird thing to me. Sometimes my sound is off and it's not perfect. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like everything that these quote haters say is 100% right. It's like, do I use that to like learn something about myself? Is that going to stop me from doing what I was put on this earth to do? You know what I mean? And that's just a serious conversation that creators have to have with themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Okay, let's talk about, you mentioned how you move around a lot and we've talked a little bit about this before. I've noticed, oh well, it seems to work for you because it does catch my attention every time that you do it. You kind of just fly into frame and
Hmm.
you share that hook and I'm already in. So what can you tell? I know you've shared this with me before, and since we have a new audience, tell us a little bit about that very strategic way that you
Yeah.
do it. Yeah.
So I learned this in acting class. So again, props to the artist, props to
Right.
the whatever. They call it the moment before. And so in film, if you're ever on set, before they call action, they normally call rolling first. And so I was a, I don't know if I told you this, I was a zombie on The Walking Dead. Do you know that?
You never told me that. No, I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. So here I am, zombie outfit, Walking Dead. And we're standing there. Imagine me. And
Uh-huh.
they go rolling, and we start moving as the zombie, and then they'll call action. And the reason they do that is when the film starts, with the edit, you want movement and you want it to be fluid because when you go back into edit, otherwise it's like, and then you can feel it.
Right.
It feels harsh, and I know it sounds so small, but if you can think about that with your videos and steal that concept from the entertainment space, that you're moving at the beginning and then you go into it, it's more human because we're never just like in life. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
We're doing something, we're in motion. And so at the beginning of your videos, you don't have to be as out there as me. It just matches my personality. If you can think about just kind of moving a little bit before you get started. So, what would we say? This is how you create binge worthy content. This is how you create binge worthy content. So I'm moving
Mm-hmm.
here. In that little bit of movement, it'll help my edit and it feels a little bit more natural.
Yeah.
So there's that piece to it. The other piece is that's another visual hook. So if there's a little bit of movement there, if there's something, I mean, you've seen some people, you know, that's a simple one that people do a lot.
Right.
The book slam, I do that towards the end of my videos, but that's another visual cue. It's just something that kind of visually wakes people up. So get
Yeah.
creative and fun with that.
Yeah. Pattern interrupts. Yeah. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like what you're saying about kind of already being in motion because it to me it's like you're dropping in as a viewer, you're dropping in on something that's already happening, it's already going
Totally.
on. And like you were saying, to your point, if you're no, it's kind of like that whole thing again where people detect that salesiness, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're like stiff and then all of a sudden here are three ways, you know right away this is not natural, right? But if it's
Yeah.
more like, here's how you create binge worthy content or whatever that hook is, yeah, that feels more natural. It feels like you're just jumping into the middle of perhaps a conversation. So yeah, I,
Preach.
I appreciate that. So then what about What about how you use? I notice you also use transitions, and I think a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't. Like the only
Mm-hmm.
transitions that people tend to use is, they'll do a zoom in. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they're using it to emphasize some kind of point, and they gets real close. But you're also using transitions like maybe they're white flashes, black flashes, those kinds of things. Tell us a little bit why you think that's important.
I don't know if it is. I've been testing a lot of stuff. I actually have a video that's coming out later today that has very few transitions. I'm just curious to see how it'll do. I took a mastermind class, a sound engineering class. George, I am George over on Instagram, great content creator. And I learned a lot from him, but he comes from the sound engineering space and was teaching us a lot about the swooshes and transitions and how to make things a little bit more interactive. And so I went really, really heavy on it for a few months to kind of play with it, learn it, be a practitioner of it. I think the important takeaway from whether you use transitions or not is thinking about the flow of the story and what serves the story. And this is where I think I've missed it a few times, several times, is sometimes we want to add things because we feel like something needs to be really jumpy or flashy versus saying, does this support the narrative? And again, back to learning from the entertainment art space is when they write scripts, they do things, it's always in service of the story. That's what they always teach you. In content creation, we don't really ask ourselves that. We're like, how can I make this more flashy? We need some b-roll here or whatever. Do you need the b-roll? Does the b-roll actually add to what you're saying, or do you just feel like you need to because Alex Hormozy has b-roll? You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So for me, transitions, I'm really trying to get a better intuition about when to use it. I will say I use some as a hook.
Yeah.
So the quote that I use, that the page turn, that makes sense because I'm opening up a book and I'm about to read you a quote. So visually I'm showing you we're turning to a book now. So that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. When I do the camera, I'm visually cueing you that we're about to watch a clip. So there is just a very strong intention. Now sometimes I've added little transitions because I was bored and I'm like, I just downloaded this new pack and this looks cool. Let me add it in. And, was it wrong of me to do that? No. But does it help me? Probably not. So I think the important question to ask yourself is, does this serve the story and help elevate the message that I'm trying to say? Or am I just adding stuff because I feel like this needs to be a dopamine hit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, if you're curious, Heather's podcast is Unconventional Leaders. It's genuinely
Thank
one
you.
of my favorites. And
Thank you.
I actually the most recent episode, which is very woo, right? I am so hooked on it. I've started listening on a road trip earlier this week, and I can't wait to finish it up
Oh,
because
cool.
it's
Thank you for saying
fascinating.
that.
Yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
saying that.
And yeah, as far as those transitions and those actual effects, those white flashes, black flashes, whatever you're using, I personally have a belief that, and I don't have anything to go on other than what I've seen in the past. My belief is that those are going to become more popular in the
Really? You think
next,
so?
because nobody's using them right now, and everybody's always looking for what can I do different, right?
Mm.
And so a lot of jump cutting is what we see in those zooms and stuff, and those I think can work still, but I feel like we see these ebbs and flows with the types of effects that people are using in their videos on
Yeah.
social media, and right now we don't see a lot of it, and I'm thinking we're going to start to see
Interesting.
more of it soon. Yeah.
I have gotten some feedback from people where they say, there's been times I've used too much. And the bright white, I've had some complaints about that. So I started steering away from the white quite a bit because people would say, like, it's blinding, it's too distracting. And I can see that because, like, when I first go into a video, if it's like blah, 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 then it's like a white flash, you might be like, whoa. So
Hmm.
some people are super, super sensitive to things. So I think it's a really interesting balance with figuring out, how do I make this interesting, but how do I not make this overwhelming?
Okay. All right. That's fair. I like that. So then what kind of tips can we give to these creators who are really trying to create something, they've got the content down and there's that technical side, and it's frustrating. They don't know what software to use or what
That's always the
transitions.
question.
Right. So what advice do you have for people that are struggling with that?
Stop worrying about the freaking software. Become a better storyteller. You know what I mean? Like, there's no cheat sheet for this. If you think you're going to download an app and get a new pack of transitions and make baller videos, you're wrong. Like, learn story structure, figure out energy, figure out how to communicate. I would take any day you destroy my phone, my tripods, my cameras, and give me some flip phone with some fuzzy video. I would take that any day than you taking away anything I've learned about storytelling, because you can capture people with so little. All that other stuff is an aid to help you elevate the story. The story is the main thing. So focus on writing. Writing is the most important element that nobody talks about, is because it's unsexy, it's unseen, it's unflashy, and it sucks. It's super not fun to sit there with a pen and paper and think through wording and understand these hooks. So that's where I would start, is focus on your writing if you're really serious about this. From a technical standpoint, I would say for short form video specifically, people could do so much better if they cut off that first half second of their video, and get straight to the point. That drives me crazy, is or that little thing. Like, just get to it. Think about your wording at the very beginning. Make it shorter than you feel like you need to. The whole thing, cut your darlings. So people who are professional writers, they're just vicious with the editing, and the whole idea is that you spew out, you go creative, and then you reel back. So make it shorter than you think it needs to be, and create some really strict perimeters around your series ideas, coming up with a list of ideas that you can test. You're always testing 3 to 5 series ideas, execute them, and then see what you can learn from that.
Awesome.
I
And
don't think I answered your question. You asked me about software, and I went on a
well,
rampage.
yeah, but at the same time, I think you did answer the question. That was just an example I threw out
Yeah.
there. And you also mentioned in your answer the length, and I'm
Right.
sure you hear that a lot too. How long should my short form videos be? What's the right length? Right? Or is it 10 seconds? Is it 30? And then now we're throwing in what some platforms are starting to say, that they want you to make longer videos. So have you found a sweet spot?
Wrong questions. These are just all the wrong questions. Not you, Mark, but I
Yeah.
get so frustrated when people talk about this, because if you know what your mission is and you know the value you're trying to give, how long does it take you to give that value? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
does it take you 10 seconds to share this tip? Then do it in 10 seconds. Do they genuinely need a minute for you to explain everything for them to really be served? Then use up that full minute. We want to think about it in terms of value and what we can do to, here I go, to serve, add value, serve folks in that short amount of time frame or time frame, versus starting with the container, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course, algorithms are favoring this and that and this and that. And you know what? Next April, they're going to be favoring something else. So
Right.
we've got to become obsessed with storytelling, writing, understanding what's valuable, and then changing that, based off the restrictions the algorithm's giving us this time.
Cool. Yeah. And then before I let you go, I need to ask, how's Costa Rica?
Oh, it's so good. Except those terrible little dragon iguana
I
lizard
saw that.
things. Oh
I
my
saw
God, dude.
that.
So I'm running, right? I'm out. I'm like a morning run and or whatever. And I just look. Nobody told me this. Nobody told me. I look down and there's a freaking reptile like this big, just chilling. I come from Georgia, so I thought I was an alligator.
Right.
And I was like,
I saw.
oh my God, my leg's about to get bitten off.
Yeah.
Terrifying. It was good. It was
And
really
then you
cool.
called it an alligator, and then I saw you got a little hate for that.
Yeah, I was just teasing. I'm like, they got these alligators out here, and people were like DMing me, and they're like, it's a Kimona dragon, whatever lady. And I'm like, who are you, Pauline 58? You know what I mean?
Right. Right. All right. Then, and by the way, please share, if you don't mind, why you were in Costa Rica.
Yeah, we were. I was at a 365 driven event by Tony Watley. Shout out to Tony. He's awesome. He had me come in to speak on short form storytelling to his group of awesome entrepreneurs. And the overall theme, a lot of entrepreneurs or whatever, people are like, I'm not creative. This takes a lot of creativity. And I love debunking that myth because all creativity is building connections between things. That's all it is. And I think people say they're not creative because honestly, it's very vulnerable and it's scary to put yourself out there in a storytelling way because it requires you to share something from your heart and your soul to really connect. And that's why people say I'm not creative.
Yes, yes, I agree. All right, so then one piece of advice, and then I will let you go. How do people really connect those dots? How do those people who say nope, I'm not creative, what's one thing they can do today to start changing that mindset?
Keep a log of things you notice throughout your day. So have a notepad, something, and just start creating a bank of ideas. Of in Matthew Dick's book, he calls it homework for life, and all it is throughout at the end of your day, you say, if I were to tell a story about something that happened today, what would it be? And you just jot it down. So you can say, my daughter showed me her muscle. True story. Emerson did this earlier. She came up to me and said, Mom, feeling my muscle. And she's 7 and I felt it. And it was just so squishy, but she was so proud of herself because she's been working out. I would tell a story about that. And so all you would do is just write out these moments. And what it does is it opens your consciousness to the life around you because we're like, oh, boring. I don't have anything to share. And it's like there's so much magic and beauty in the day. And if you can just practice noticing things, ideas want to come to you. Like creativity wants to be used. Like this stuff is here. It's not a matter of learning it, it's a matter of like tuning in.
Awesome. That great
Is that
advice.
woo and weird?
It's my kind of
I
woo
can
and
go
weird.
wooer.
I know you can, and I'm. That's another conversation I'll have with
Yeah.
you at some point. I would love to have that conversation with you. So until then, please share what's the best way for everybody to connect with you.
At Heather Parady. You can find me over on Instagram. That's the best. So thank you, Mark, for that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything coming up? Another trip to Costa Rica or anything that we can all be excited about and maybe come join?
Um,
Any speaking events?
no, I can't remember off the top of my head. I may be at a university in a couple of months. I can't say the name of the university just yet, but speaking to their students, I'm excited about
Cool.
that, about content. But I think the biggest thing is just, plugging into what you're doing, Mark, and having experts like you who can like ride with folks. It's so important to lock arms with people who are doing this stuff too and not try to do it alone because it's hard and
Yeah.
sometimes it can get to you. You know what I mean? You have to keep your mind right. So that's why I love what you do in the community you're building is you're giving people an opportunity to lock arms with you so they can last longer and
Yeah.
be smarter about their content they're making. So thank you for the work you're doing. It's awesome.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thank you for saying that. I appreciate it, and thank you for joining me again. I appreciate it. I guess you like me enough to come back and do another
I'll
interview.
I'll tell you what. As long as we can go woo again, I'm good. I'm here.
All right, next one we're doing all woo.
Nobody will tune into that one.
Right, exactly. Well, some might, but yes, we'll have a different audience probably. For
Yeah,
that
for
one.
sure. For sure.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you, Mark. This was cool. I appreciate you.